Hello, this is Eve Stanway, the host of Dare to Speak, Difficult Conversations That Can Change Everything. Welcome to episode 15, where I will be discussing why men find it hard to talk about their feelings. If you watch the internet, you'll see all these posts and things that say, oh, men don't know how to talk about their feelings and women know how to talk about their feelings. And that's very, very simplistic. If we look at art, if we look at literature, if we look at poetry, if we just look at people, we can see that men and women experience feelings. We both do. The difference is that for many men, and I'm going to say for most men over a certain age, they were taught that feelings were a sign of weakness. They were taught not to cry. They were taught to hold it in. They were taught not to express feelings in any more than very kind of broad brushstroke terms. They could say that they were angry. They could say that they were furious. They could say that they were sad, maybe, or a bit miserable. But there were some key feelings which it's really important to be able to express, which is feelings of vulnerability, being scared, being afraid of being hurt, feeling judged, feeling criticized, feeling unwanted, feeling mistreated, feeling misunderstood. And I can go on. There are so many different feelings. So men don't talk about their feelings because they were taught from a young age that they were, oh, you're a big girl, you're talking about your feelings. Oh, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you for having feelings? And there becomes this kind of distance between where you can have a feeling, but you can't talk about it in any great depth. Feelings of love, feelings of frustration, feelings of desire, feelings of helplessness, hopelessness, despair. And it's not just naming the feelings like I'm doing at the moment, but it's what does it mean? What does despair mean to me? What does despair mean to you? So what you see happen very often, certainly what I see, this is something I come across again and again, which is why I want to talk about why men don't talk about their feelings, is what I see very often is men speaking in terms of confusion. Or perhaps they're shut down. They just go silent. Or perhaps they go volatile. Because I don't need to deal with my feelings if I can blame you for my feelings. All I need you to do is you stop doing the thing that makes me feel stuff, and then I don't have to deal with or talk about my feelings. So what happens is if we don't speak about our emotions, then our emotions are still there, but we're not sharing it. We've still got to find a way of explaining our behaviors, so we explain it in a different way. We go volatile. We either become very critical because we can't just complain that we're feeling sad, we're feeling that we're not being looked out for, we're not feeling appreciated. That's a really big thing. So in 25 years of working with individuals and working with couples, I'm not appreciated, I'm not respected, I'm not valued. Goes alongside, be strong, do it for yourself, don't complain, just keep going. And men and women who are listening to this are going to recognize this language. We're going to recognize the way that when we are struggling because we can't express how we feel, we've got to find another way of doing it. I've talked in previous podcast episodes about shaming, blaming, and criticizing. Shaming somebody else. You always do this. What's wrong with you? Oh, you're just the kind of person. You've always been hopeless at that. Or criticizing. You never do anything wrong. You always do this. You never do that. Just words that disguise the fact that we actually really don't know how to talk about feelings. There are loads of women who also don't know how to talk about feelings. They struggle. But what happens for men very often, and this is what they say to me, they feel rejection. They feel confusion. They feel anger. They feel shame or failure. And they feel scared about being a bad dad, not being a good dad, not having a connection with their own kids. These are real everyday experiences that men go through. I know that there's a lot on the internet about men being, man children and having to be like told what to do. But if somebody's in a situation where they can't talk about what they need or what they're feeling, and they themselves aren't able to express why they're finding it hard or what they're finding hard, then what happens is the position of contrived or uncontrived incompetence. So imagine this. Imagine imagine I'm trying to load the dishwasher and I'm not sure how to do it. I've watched you do it. You're really good at doing it. You can just do it smoothly. You know what plates go where. You seem to be able to take a whole Sunday lunch and load it into the dishwasher in 5 minutes. And I've no idea how you do it. And I feel a bit shamed and I feel a bit embarrassed. And I want to ask, how do you do that? Or I want to say, can't you just do it for me because it's too hard for me to work it out? When somebody says, can you do it for me? It's too hard to work it out. What they're saying is, I'm scared of failing. I'm scared of not getting it right. I'm scared I won't be any good at it. I'm scared that I'll do it and it'll be wrong. I'm scared that you won't love me anymore because I don't know how to do something that you can do really well. I'm scared I'm not good enough for you because you're really good at doing stuff like that and I can't do it at all. I become inadequate. And all of these things are feelings that men have quite simply, and there are men out there listening to this, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, and please do. Men are not given the opportunity to be able to say these things. So what happens is that they end up very often with very hurt feelings, but no way of expressing. When we can't say, and this is the same for children, we know this with kids, if a child is in a class and they want to ask a question and they are scared that they will be told that they are stupid, what will that child do? Maybe you were that child who are listening to this. You're going to feel something, aren't you? You're going to feel misunderstood. You're going to feel unvalued. You're going to feel like people don't really care what you have to think anyway. And what that does is it causes people to either switch off or to lash out. So talking about feelings, something which most men, certainly most men in 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, were raised at a time when what was valued? What was valued was duty, obedience, respect for one's elders, hard work, tolerance of discomfort and pain. And back to duty again. You see, if you want people to be dutiful and you want them to be obedient and you want them to be able to tolerate pain and just work really hard, you want, in fact, to be able to send them to war where they might die or where they might have to kill the people. And what you're going to need to do is make sure that they don't talk about how they feel about doing it. Because if they were to talk about how they felt about doing it, they might not want to do it. So if we repress feelings, if we say, don't cry, stiff upper lip, stiff upper lip. I remember hearing that being said at my granddad's funeral when my father was crying at the loss of his dad. He's letting the side down. He should have more of a stiff upper lip. I was probably about 19 then, but I remember being rocked back on my heels slightly. Of how is it not okay for somebody to mourn somebody and to cry at their funeral? But of course, it wasn't okay because he's a man. Now, there are plenty of women, and I would say that back in those generations, kind of 70, people who were born 70 years ago, 80 years ago, 90 years ago, women also were taught not to give in to their feelings. Feelings repression really was seen as a positive and jolly good trait. That's changed a bit for women, I would say, over the years. But the change for men has been much slower and it's been very, very different. And that's why I wanted to come on this episode and talk about why don't men talk about their feelings. There are many, many reasons. Society encourages men not to talk about their feelings. Society has created negative comparisons between men who express emotion and comparing them to women. That's historic. That's a historic inequality in society where men were told that they shouldn't be emotional, and women's emotional world was considered as a weakness. The rational world is better. Be rational, know your own mind. As a psychologist, psychotherapist, and coach who's worked with people over 25 years, I can tell you, having worked with men and women extensively in that time, knowing your own mind is really difficult. In order to know your own mind, you've either have got to have done all of the emotional work or you've got to have done none of it. Because in order to know our own mind, we need to understand our emotional world, how we feel about stuff, and we need to understand our rational world, what we think about stuff. And what we think and what we feel can be quite difficult to work out. In my listen, speak, lead framework, I break this down. I break it down to be able to, in the first part, listen, to be able to work and think about our emotional regulation. And this is the key point of this episode, really. One way of regulating people's emotions is by getting them to deny their emotions, deny their feelings. This is the route that men have very, very often been encouraged to. Regulate your feelings by denying them, by repressing them, by suppressing them. And that way you won't have emotions. And then you can try and work out what's happening from a purely logical point of view, from a rational point of view. We'll look at the data and we'll analyze it and see what's best. I studied a lot of philosophy back in the day, and that's how a lot of philosophy was worked out. Let's bring in logic. Let's bring in these rational thought processes to try and get away from the emotional ambiguity that comes with thinking and feeling. In order to be able to have difficult conversations, we need to be able to regulate our emotions, not repress them. We need to speak what's happening inside of us in a way that allows us to explore those feelings, to work out what is real for us, what's not real, what works for us, and what doesn't work for us. When we do get into that feelings territory of talking about our feelings, it can feel really uncertain, it can feel really insecure. And so what happens is during separation and divorce, men and women, but men do this, they are encouraged either to go silent and be stoical, and that's your man who doesn't speak. He just goes through life without really expressing feelings, unless it's a very kind of top level, oh, I'm happy because somebody's had a birthday. But they don't really talk about it. So this will be, I'll give you an example. A man that I spoke with, and every Easter, everybody in the family got an Easter egg. The children got an Easter egg. The mother got an Easter egg. Even the grandparents got Easter eggs. But he didn't get an Easter egg. He never got one. And from a rational point of view, as a good provider, he understood that he was a man and he could have some of the other Easter eggs. Although he would get into trouble when he ate any of the children's Easter eggs, and he certainly would get into trouble if he ate any of the mother's Easter egg. Well, it made him feel a certain way not to get any Easter eggs. He felt something. He felt left out. He felt abandoned. He felt rejected. He felt unimportant. And what's more, he felt a high level of silliness for caring so much about the fact that he never got an Easter egg. He felt silly. He felt ashamed. He felt that he was being foolish and stupid because he was really upset every single year he didn't get an Easter egg, and he knew he could go and buy himself an Easter egg. But that wasn't the same. So he's sitting there with his feelings about not getting an Easter egg every year. Um, and he's really got nowhere to go because when you say it, it sounds silly. Oh, mate, just go buy yourself an Easter egg. Oh, what's your fuss? Oh, just tell them you want an Easter egg, they'll get you one. So it sounds like it's silly. But I suppose I'm going to leave you to have a think about it. Is it silly? Is it silly to want to be remembered enough to be bought an Easter egg? Is it silly to feel like you're being left out and that to resonate with being left out as a child, being overlooked? And then I talk a little bit more to him, and it turns out he was from a big family and there wasn't always enough to go round. And it was one of those families where all the food gets put in the middle of the table and then food is served around. And he always used to worry, he was always hungry. And he was always would worry that there wouldn't be enough for him to eat. And if he ever complained about it, he was told he was silly. He was told that he was making a fuss, and of course there was enough to eat. But you see, like most people, there were some bits of those food that were being passed around that he really liked. And there were other bits he didn't like. He liked the crispy roast potatoes. But by the time they got to him, he might not get one. So that anxiety, that fear, that sense that he's going to miss out travels all the way through his life to adulthood. But of course, he's being taught from a young age not to talk about his feelings because that's silly. That's what girls do. That's not what men do. And that he should be a protector and a provider. And he shouldn't be so foolish as to be upset every single year because he doesn't get an Easter egg and he doesn't know how to express it. Now, for Easter egg, you can substitute gratitude, thanks, affection, hugs, cuddles, birthday presents, thoughtful actions, even a cup of tea. Because the reality for a lot of men, the reason why they're not talking about their feelings, and we know that there's some, there's really some very difficult individuals out there, and there's some, highly misogynistic frames of mind in circulation at the moment. But for your general, everyday, normal father or husband or partner, there's a heart beating that feels hurt or feels lack. When divorce and separation, when family breakdown happen, that lack, those feelings get magnified. The pressure goes up. The complexity explodes. And being able to talk about how you feel in those situations is really, really hard for men. They're often told, oh, well, you can go and find someone else, oh, you'll be free now. Oh, you won't have to have that ball and chain, that family life. Because how would he ever say, but I loved it? It made me feel really good. I could hear my children arguing with each other and I could hear them. And so I felt good. I felt good that I knew they were asleep upstairs in the same house as me. Or I'm scared. Because I've been going out to work all the time, I haven't been looking after the kids one-to-one. And actually, I know this sounds mad, and I know that my children are now 8 and 11, but I've never spent a whole week with them by myself, and I'm a bit frightened about what will happen. I don't know how I'll keep them entertained. I don't know whether I'll be any good at it. I don't know whether I'll get it wrong, whether I'll get criticized, or whether I'll make a mistake. As I'm talking about these things, it could be that there are people who are listening who are going, no, it's not like that, you know. But I know that there will be people listening who are going, yeah, 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 it's exactly like that. Because when we can't talk about our feelings, we can't talk about our doubts. It's very hard to learn. It's very hard to be curious and experiment. We need to be able to get things wrong in order to be able to get things right. But when we get it wrong, we experience a whole load of feelings. And for a lot of people, those feelings have become part of our like character identity of who we think we are. So what happens? We avoid the conversation, things escalate, the communication just collapses. And if it's separation and divorce, the lawyers step in and then the finances collapse too. So what can we do? First of all, we can very, very, very clearly say that talking about our emotions is not a personality trait. It's not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of strength. Communication, learning how to communicate what we think and what we feel is a skill set. In my framework, listen, speak, lead, and teach how to communicate. It's just a set of skills. How to work out what your intention is, how to stick to one subject, how to avoid escalating into attack, how to speak according to your values, how to raise the tone of conversations, how to ask for an outcome, how to regulate yourself, how to deal with it when it goes wrong, how to stick to the subject, how to disagree with dignity. These are all the things I teach. Because if we can't do these things, then what happens is difficult conversations remain. If you struggle with difficult conversations, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It means that you haven't learned the skills of how to do it correctly. That's it. That's what it means. Communicating during a time of conflict or difference, communicating when you're under scrutiny, actually. I mean, that's why people don't like presenting and giving presentations because all the eyes are on them while they're doing it. Doing that, there's a skill set. I mean, that's why you go to presentation skills workshops. That's why people in customer care go to special workshops in how to deal with customer complaints and difficult conversations. That's why services that are front facing that have to handle really complex or difficult topics go and get training. They get taught how to do it. So as I wind down this episode on why men find it hard to talk about their feelings, and I have scratched the surface, literally just, I've made a couple of comments about this really big, big, complex subject. For the man who didn't know how to express how he felt about not getting his Easter eggs, his future was being shaped by his inability to have that conversation. I can tell you now, he did not come for coaching. Excuse me. He didn't come for coaching on how to ask for an Easter egg, but he might as well have. He came for coaching on how to have difficult, life-changing conversations because at the time his family was going through breakdown. It was going through complex change and he had no idea how he was going to navigate it. And he needed to be able to lead his family through these dark times. He needed to be able to have the skills to listen what was happening, regulate his own body, communicate with intention, holding to his values, raising the tone and getting positive outcomes. He needed to step into leadership so he could lead his family in whatever form it was into the future. But he also needed to know how to ask for what he wanted in life. He needed to be able to express what you do when you're finding it a bit unfair. So That's what I'm going to leave you with today. If you were a man, does this resonate? If you're a woman, what do you think listening to this? Drop me a chat in the comments, DM me, reach out, because this matters. Learning how to have difficult conversations and express feelings can change everything. Most men think it will change it for the worse. They are scared that if they say how they feel, things will be less good, not more good. The reality is, if we don't say how we feel, things tend to get worse or stay the same. So next week, I am going to talk in episode 16 about why couples stop listening to each other. What is happening when that communication is breaking down? And how we can use the listen, speak framework, how we can use the magic 3 of clarify, communicate, and correct to start bringing couples back together so they can communicate with each other. So thank you so much for your time today. If this has been useful, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Take a look at my website. I'm shortly going to be opening up a new community, which you'll be able to find. If it's a while since this episode came out, you'll definitely be able to find it at www.evestanway.co.uk. And I really look forward to seeing you there. Feel free to scan the QR code as well if you want this on a screen, and it will take you straight to my website. So I look forward to seeing you at the next episode. Thank you so much.